On the Healthy Human Revolution podcast, Dr. Lori Marbas interviews nutrition and lifestyle medicine experts and extraordinary guests whose informative and inspiring stories will empower you with the knowledge to transform your life and health.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm Dr. Lori Marbas, and today I'm so excited. I get to interview again one of my dearest friends, Dr. Saray Stancic. How are you?
So good. And thank you so much for this opportunity to meet with you to talk about this new book. And I'm really happy to share with you that you are my first official interview.
I am so tickled.
Missing from medicine. What could be better than starting with my dear friend, Lori Marbas?
Yes, ma'am. And I'll tell you, sorry, you're like one of the sweetest, smartest people I know. And I'm so excited that you wrote this book. And it really speaks to something so very important, to all of us. And, you titled is What's Missing from Medicine, but it's really about what's missing from our lives, right? So can you tell us a little bit about what was your actual, maybe the desire and what you want to see the outcome is from your book and why you chose to write it?
Right. Well, what's missing from medicine, the origin of the title is really from my perspective as training in medical school, residency, fellowship. These were elements that were missing in that experience. So this is what we call, that missing piece. We're trained in the field of pathogenesis, and we lack this idea of salutogenesis. Pathogenesis is the disease state. Salutogenesis is health. How do we create and embody health? And that extraordinarily is absent in medical school. And so really, I thought to myself, wow, how is it that we don't learn this? And wouldn't it be wonderful to convey this message in a very simple, I think, dialogue? My hope was that the book would just simply be a conversation between myself and the reader, as if they were sitting in my office and just conveying these very simple messages. And what's extraordinary to me, Lori, is that it is so powerful, as you know. And this is why you've dedicated this part of your career to this idea of lifestyle medicine and this promotion of plant-based nutrition. And it's regrettable that we didn't learn these messages when we were in medical school. So part of it for me is, and part of making the film Code Blue in totality was really to play a role in shifting the paradigm so that other doctors in our younger generations, those that are in medical school now and that are to come in the future, and you have a daughter, I believe is about to graduate from medical school.
In May, yes.
May.
Paradox.
I know she's getting these messages because she has mom, but we want all young men and women who are training for this beautiful profession. I'm humbled to be a physician and the great privilege of practicing in this field, but it is regrettable that this is not part of the foundation on which we learn. So I think my hope is that the book serves the average individual who really just wants some guidance on how to improve their personal health. And also, I would love the book to be part of day one at medical school.
Oh, that's
like
brilliant.
walk in with this guide and assure that the experience in medical school, which of course it's important that we learn all about the pathology and the disease state and the medications and the great advancements that we've made in the field of medicine, how wonderful, but that this is missing is to me regrettable. And so that's why the book is entitled What's Missing from Medicine. But you're right, it's missing in our lives. And it's largely because not much attention has been brought to it, and hopefully through this book I can add to the dialogue that these are topics that we really need to disseminate amongst our community and the globe.
I think that's fabulous. I mean, can you imagine having a student actually have a class on how to speak to their patients regarding, these 6 kind of pillars of healthy living? I mean, that would be amazing. Geez. I will be sending this copy on to my daughter.
We're working on that. We all are, all of us who are part of this lifestyle medicine movement. And as you know, it is growing every day. I know that the membership at the American College of Lifestyle Medicine is growing at a near exponential rate, which is extraordinary. And I think the world will be different 5 years from today in a way.
Yes.
But we need to continue to coalesce our voices and speak to this, because it is so powerful. We want a country that, I mean, today we have a country that is largely overweight or obese. 70% of Americans are either obese or overweight. And so in our country, if you're normal weight, you are in a minority. I mean, that's even hard to grasp. Chronic diseases like diabetes are exploding in our country. We expect to see diabetes rates as high as 30% by 2050. This is what the CDC predicts. And we have the knowledge and understanding today to prevent that. We have the tools. We have the great physicians like you and so many across the country, Dr. Miller and Dr. Clapper, who are all doing important work to deliver this message. So I'm just grateful to be part of that movement.
Well, we're excited because just a short plug also for your movie. I mean, The Code Blue is excellent, and you can see it is on Amazon, right? And a few other places.
Amazon, Google Play. I think we're just about on almost every platform.
Awesome.
So many. Yeah, so
great.
It's out there. And Google, you can go to codebluedoc.com. That's our website. And there you'll find different platforms.
Awesome. Okay, perfect. And that was excellent. My family thought it was amazing too. They're like, you know her? I'm like, yeah, I do. Oh my goodness. All right. So let's start kind of diving into the book, because I think it's really important that people understand, yes, it's a simple message, but it's a very powerful message. And, I really want to talk about, I loved even just the chapter names, honestly. You talk about the man-made epidemic of chronic disease. Can you just kind of explain, because I loved your graphics of like what we were doing in 1900 versus, now. I mean, that 100 years is very different. Can you explain for us?
We were primarily in the early 20th century. We were dying primarily not of the diseases that we see today, right? We were dying primarily of infectious diseases, right? Like pneumonia, and we're in the midst of this COVID-19 pandemic, so things have changed. But certainly it was a time where we were succumbing to infectious diseases, and I'm an infectious disease physician and can very much appreciate the amazing advances in obviously the development of antibiotics and vaccines and antivirals. I came into this profession in the midst of the HIV epidemic, and we had wards of patients living dying from AIDS. And at that point, we had no, other than managing the opportunistic infections in which they came with, we had no antivirals. And today we have this armamentarium of antiretrovirals that have really taken a disease that was once a death sentence to one that is a chronic disease that we manage really quite effectively. So that the field of infectious diseases has made amazing strides. Today, again, putting the COVID-19 pandemic to the side for a moment, today, when you look at the CDC's most common causes of death, we see heart disease, cancer, diabetes, stroke, Alzheimer's disease, and we largely know that many of these diseases are amenable to lifestyle change. And so that many of the behaviors in which we engage in are leading to these diseases. So that is, and I know that the title is a bit controversial and it might upset some people, but the truth is that so much of what we're seeing, heart disease, namely the number one cause of death in our country, we know is largely preventable by modifying our dietary choices, by addressing our sedentary status, addressing the level of stress and our dependency on substances like tobacco and alcohol and others, and also this idea that a large percentage of our population isn't getting effective sleep. So man-made in that sense, I think, and this was something that was probably, and I think you'll agree with me, reinforced in our experience in medical, so that there was a lot of emphasis on genetics. And certainly genes play a role, but don't kid yourself and don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Lifestyle matters most. And for some people, that might be an empowering message. For others, that may feel uncomfortable. It may feel like blame is being laid on them. And that's not the purpose here. The purpose here is to educate and empower individuals. Now, if you know, I mean, the same thing with cigarette smoking, it's undeniable, unquestionable, indisputable, right? That we know cigarettes lead to a lot of really bad outcomes, right?
Mhm.
Cancer, heart disease, COPD. I mean, long list. Yet, some people choose to smoke. That's okay. But that's an educated decision that you've made. I
Mhm.
don't think that the average American understands that the food that they're consuming is leading to their premature death. And that's really the message that I want to convey, because I
Right.
want them to understand. Because I think a lot, and you know this because you've heard your patients say this to you. How many times have you heard this? Dr. Marbus, I'm diabetic because my father was diabetic, his father was diabetic, and his father was diabetic. The problem is not that your genes are dictating that you're all going to be diabetic. The problem is that you're all engaging in the same behaviors.
Mhm.
So we just need one person, one bold individual to say, I'm changing it up. And then
Right.
guess what happens? That whole lineage changes.
Yep.
And we start
Absolutely.
seeing some good outcomes. And for me, lifestyle medicine and the principles that that I discuss in the book, that we discuss as a field, are, to me, empowering. It's exciting.
Mhm.
And you know, again, from my personal perspective, sort of stepping back into my own personal story, when I learned these things, and they came to me around 2003, when I was 8 years into my MS diagnosis and not doing well, when I uncovered these glimpses of evidence that spoke to the importance of food and weight and physical fitness and movement, all the when I understood those connections between disease outcomes and these to me, it was like, wow, the world opened up to me. It was like that aha moment, like the light just came shining in, and all of a sudden I felt hopeful that at age 32, when I was walking with a cane and wearing a diaper, that there might be something beyond what I was doing. And to me, it was empowering. And I started there, and of course, you know the end of the story, that things turned for me dramatically favorably, and that to me was near miraculous. And I needed to find a vehicle by which to disseminate that message as effectively as possible. Hence the leaving infectious diseases as my profession and starting this lifestyle medicine practice in a world where no one knew what lifestyle medicine was. And then this idea of producing a film, and then ultimately the invitation last year to write a book.
I mean, and your story is powerful in and of itself. Can you just give us a little bit about the time that I love the blueberry story. You got to tell the blueberry story, but then just kind of what was the timeline and what was I mean, you had lesions that had resolved. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I think that's really powerful.
Sure. So in 1995, when I was a medical resident, in the midst of a busy call, I found that I couldn't feel my legs. I woke up, I was paged and couldn't feel my legs. And that led to an emergent MRI and a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. So at the time, in 1995, I had multiple lesions in both my brain and spinal cord. The doctors who saw me during that hospitalization said to me that the burden of disease was significant, and that I could expect to be in a wheelchair within 10 to 20 years. And, you know, this was life altering for me. I was a young woman, I was in the last year of my internal medicine residency, expecting, this was my dream to become a physician. I had all this work. I finally got to the top of the mountain, and all of a sudden I got crushed.
Mm.
And so it was a very dark period for me. And what I found, Lori, that over the years that followed, that the medications just kept topping one after another, and I found myself within 5 to 6 years, I was taking a dozen medicines to treat all of not only the slowing the progression of the disease, but all the side effects of the drugs that I was taking, and the other complications of the disease like neuropathy and my bladder and depression, another big one. In 2003, when I was probably at my worst, I came across by chance a silly article. I found there was a journal, and on the cover of the journal, I saw the words multiple sclerosis and blueberries. And I thought to myself, what could that be? This is ridiculous. And it wasn't like the New England Journal of Medicine. It was like some really bad journal. But of course, I, curious, picked it up, read the article, and it was a poorly constructed, unscientific study that essentially took a small group of MS patients and fed them a diet enriched in blueberries. And the authors went on to conclude that these patients felt better, not a very objective clinical endpoint. I mean, I was a researcher. I couldn't believe that this was something that had been published, but there it was. And the researchers proposed that it was the antioxidants, the phytonutrients, this anthocyanin that gave this little blueberry that blue color, that this little magical element was doing all of these good things. And I thought, this is crazy. I was sort of mad. I talked to a friend of mine who's another physician. I shared it with him. He laughed. I did too. And we thought it was a big joke. But something about that little blueberry study, I couldn't get out of my head, right? It kept coming back. And it wasn't that I thought eating blueberries was going to solve my MS problem. A much more important question surfaced from that line of thinking for the first time in my adult life. Now, remember, I'm an attending dual board certified physician, right? Mm-hmm. For the first time in my adult life, I considered the following question: could there be a connection between diet and disease? I know it sounds crazy, but that's true. And so I went to PubMed and I typed in multiple sclerosis, diet, and chronic disease and diet, and all that. And of course, what I got back was wow, it blew me away. More light coming in. And just like excitement, like, when the little hairs on the back of your neck stand up, you're just like, wow, this is amazing. And it was good evidence, not crap that you find in the New Yorker. I mean, science, New England Journal of Medicine, Lancet, Annals of Internal Medicine, JAMA. I mean, legitimate publications by real scientists. And that was the turning point for me. Now, my wonderful physicians who were caring for me, these top rated neurologists, couldn't appreciate that perspective and advised me to remain compliant with the medicine that I was taking. But I was doing that for 8 years and I was getting sicker. Mm-hmm. I was moving in the wrong direction. So I made this unconventional decision in 2003 that I would instead of just following this medication approach, that I would optimize every aspect of my lifestyle. So I, very carefully tapered off of every one of those medications. And I just worked on optimizing every little part of my life. And, long story short, I went from somebody who was dependent on a cane or crutches or whatever it was I needed at the time to somebody who crossed a finish line at a marathon, which is, like, if you would have told me in 2003 you're going to run a marathon, I would have said you are insane. That's not possible. So it certainly this idea of lifestyle had borne fruit for me, obviously, mm-hmm. and it took on a whole new meaning for me, and again just invigorated me, and it drove this need to want to share this, because there's nothing special about me. There's nothing.
Oh, I think there is something special about you. I tell people. Oh, yes, there's. I think there's a point in everyone's life, something happens like this where you have such a drastic inflection of where you were headed. Your journey takes a different vector because of you and your love for others. You felt compelled to share this message, and what a wonderful, humble human to bring such a wonderful message of healing. I think that's really, really important, and that's your gift. So, my aunt died of MS within 4 years of diagnosis in the 90s, and I only wish I knew, she was 44 when she died. And so I'm just like, it's sad to see someone wither away like that. So, I mean, it's powerful. And I think you're the perfect person to bring this amazing message. So I think you're very special. Um, so obviously I'm a fan. So when
I am of you.
oh, you're so fine. We're just going to keep just
I know,
fanning
this is
each
like a
other.
love fest.
What they call them, the bromancer. There's a cis rants or something.
I like that. I've never heard it before, but I think we've just coined the term.
There we go. I'll take it. As far as I do too want to, you just quickly mention you've had more recent MRIs, and what do those show?
Yeah. So essentially no disease. I mean, there is some scarring from old lesions, but and in the film, I actually had an MRI done for the film, and it clearly shows no new lesions.
Amazing.
And it's been wonderful. And this year, I think I told you this before, but this year I celebrated or commemorated 25 years since the diagnosis. So it was October 11th, 1995 that I was diagnosed. So this year was 25 years. And on that day, I walked 25 miles. And it was such a moment of celebration for me because I had been told that I'd be in a wheelchair, and I couldn't be further away from one.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, that right there is enough to make this it's just incredible. Oh my goodness. All right, moving on to the next chapter here. We get it. Because I tell, I talk to people, and one of my title of my speeches is chronic disease a choice? And it does tick people off, but I'm like, good, I got your attention. Let's talk.
Yeah.
So that's the whole point. I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to help you get well.
Right. It will definitely tick people off. And even in the introduction of the book, I talk about COVID, and this was like a last minute addition because I handed in the book in January because it takes a while to get published, and my publisher called me up and he said, we really should add something about COVID, and it's so timely. And I'm glad that we managed to get in because, again, this is a very difficult time that we're experiencing. We're still in the midst of it, but the point that I wanted to make is we cannot ignore the fact that we as a country, with this baseline of chronic disease and obesity, is playing a role in worse outcomes. We see that COVID-19 is the morbidity and mortality associated with this infection is doing much more damage, not only in the elderly, but in patients and individuals that have chronic disease. And we know that more than half of Americans are living with one chronic disease, and hypertension and COPD. So these are all chronic diseases put us at risk of having worse outcomes. So I think, and I hope that one of the silver linings here from this difficult moment is that we learn to better care for ourselves, so that we can live healthier and happier lives.
Absolutely. And I have to share with you. So as you are fully aware of the plant-based telehealth, and we brought this, we literally launched the week COVID hit us. I mean, you couldn't have planned that better. I mean, it took us a year and a half to plan, and we just happened to launch. But one of my patients who was an uncontrolled diabetic, his first appointment with me was after he had COVID. And he had switched his diet at the diagnosis of COVID. He goes, I have to do something. I have to get healthier. He goes, I felt better with COVID eating this way than I did before COVID and not eating this way with diabetes uncontrolled.
Isn't that something? That tells you a lot.
I mean, the powerful statement that is that even with this, and he was sick, he was in the hospital for several days, and but the power of the food and what we're making those choices 3 times a day or however many times a day you're eating, it really that's really struck me. And when I told him again, I was like, it just so amazes me. He said that. He goes, that's a silly statement. I was like, no, it's not. I said, that's how you were feeling at that moment. Don't forget it, because when you find temptation, I want you to hold on to that and say, remember, I feel better with COVID on the plant-based diet than before. So anyway, it was really remarkable, and I'm just thankful for him for saying it, but it really struck home with me.
That's an important testimonial. Right? That's something that should be shared, because often individuals are inspired by testimonials like that.
Absolutely. And
Right.
yes, there will definitely be me asking nicely to please let me, I did, ask if I could share with some people, and he's like, yeah, that's fine, because I think he's just excited to help other people feel better too. So it's
Yeah.
amazing. But let's talk about the lifestyle medicine solution. So can you describe like what is lifestyle medicine when we speak to that people? Because you'll say, like, I'll say I'm family lifestyle medicine physician, and they're like, what is that? And so what would you say to that?
So lifestyle medicine is a relatively new discipline. I think the ACLM celebrated about 15 years last year, right? I think so.
I think so, somewhere in there.
So I like to think of lifestyle medicine as a discipline that seeks to educate and empower patients on the importance of what I call 6 spokes on a lifestyle medicine wheel, right? So they
Mhm.
are optimal nutrition, so primarily plant-based diet, physical activity, stress management, effective sleep hygiene, a discussion around substance abuse issues, and the importance of social interconnectedness. We know those amongst us who are isolated, depressed, are more likely to develop a chronic disease and even die prematurely. So those are and I say it's a wheel with 6 spokes because I think it's so important that, because some of us are we're really good at food, or we're really good at exercise. And sometimes we ignore the other things. Like I would have patients who come in and they're running marathons every week, but then they're eating a cheeseburger right afterwards, and they're drinking a whole lot, and that, in order for you to achieve your best self, you really need to address all aspects of lifestyle. That's what I call the sweet spot. So when we can address, like, some of us are really good at sleeping, and this is, a lot of patients will do this. They're really good at food, and they're exercising, and they're meditating, but then they don't sleep.
Mhm.
So, and it causes them a lot of issues in terms of, in regards to quality of life. So I say the spokes because if you had a couple of those spokes that were sort of wonky, your forward movement on that wheel wouldn't be very efficient, right? So I want you to work on, I mean, at least this is what I speak to in the book, that I want you to work on all aspects, if you would, simultaneously. Maybe you can't change your diet overnight. You can do a couple of things, right? If you're eating bacon, egg, and cheese every day for breakfast, if I could just add, instead of eating 2 eggs, maybe cut it down to 1 and add a bowl of fruit, then it's a step in the right direction. Sometimes we have to start there, it's things like that. But also address, what can I do today for like, it's not just let's just work on food this week, and then I'll start the physical activity stuff in 2 months. Let's do a little bit on each one of them. Like, you don't do anything, you just sit on the couch and watch Netflix for 4 hours every. Okay, let's get you to do a 5-minute walk. You know what I mean? Like, I want you to actively address every aspect of your lifestyle medicine wheel, each one of those spokes, and continue to add and add. And you know what? And do it at your pace, because we have to be respectful of where people are. We're not going to be judgmental. We're going to support and love and, push people in the right direction, support them, but they have to go at their own pace, because when I shouldn't use the word push, because push implies it should
Although
be
sometimes you need to do that.
a little bit. Yes, you do. But you need to do it in a way that isn't going to be off-putting. And this, when you get a sense every time, every patient you see is different,
Oh, yes.
and they
Very.
come from different experiences, different backgrounds. What their norm is different than the other patient's norm. So we have to be respectful. And that's part of lifestyle medicine, is listening, right?
Oh, I think that's just part of medicine that a lot of people forget.
A lot of people forget. Sometimes we don't listen, and we just type on the computer. We have our back to the patient. That's another beautiful thing about lifestyle medicine, is that you're looking at the patient, you're talking to them. You want to know their history. You want to know, where did you grow up? I ask questions like that because it tells me so much. Tell me about your work. Like, really understanding the environment that they live in, that they experience when they walk out of your office or walk out of your screen, right? You want to really understand their family life. because all of these variables are important as to, like, what are the obstacles that they're coming across? Like, why can't you make that meal? Why can't you go out for that 10-minute walk? What are the obstacles that are in your life, and how can we mediate them?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a quick fix. That's the other thing about lifestyle medicine, is that it's not like when you come in with a UTI and I write you a prescription for an antibiotic, and then you take it, it gets better. Lifestyle medicine is work, and it's not just work. Me actively writing you a prescription, it's this team effort, right? It's you and me working together, and my job is to guide you and support you, guide and support.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
all those touch points that we have to continue.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, and you know this, you have patients that become professionals. They could do it, right?
Oh my good. There are some that challenge me to like, wow, you know a lot. And I'm like, why are you here seeing me? You're doing so well.
You don't need me. Yeah.
Exactly that. And I always tell patients, I'm like, I'm really working to put myself out of a job because that means that we've done our job well. So
That's the goal, right? Because we don't want I call it the forever patient.
no.
That's what we have now, regrettably, in medicine.
Yeah.
We have the forever diabetic.
Yes.
And what we want to do, if we're doing our jobs really effectively, we are going to empower these patients to no longer need us. That's the goal.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, just 2 nights ago, I was seeing a patient and I was like, look at you, no longer a diabetic. I'm so sorry. I have to remove that from your file. Oh, bummer. And she's like cracking up the whole time. And it's just so much fun to do those things. I'm like, you stop medications. And I really think, as you're talking about all that, I think people forget or don't know what it's like to feel normal, like a good normal, right? So I think now, especially with our children getting these chronic diseases earlier, and they're fatigued and they're obese, and what is it, 25% I think of kids are overweight, and we're walking through this life never understanding what it's like to actually feel good. Because I know I just turned 50, and I think you're in that
I'm way past-
you're in that range too. It's like, so but I'm like, I know my chronological age says 50, but I really feel like I'm in my 20s.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think about that?
No, I think that's such a great point. I think people don't know what normal feels like. It's funny that you say that, because I think back. So for those many years where my disease was really taking a significant toll on me from the perspective of my quality of life, I didn't know what it was like not to feel fatigue. I mean, drowning fatigue. I didn't know what it was like to feel my legs normally. Like, I typically wouldn't feel, particularly my left leg. It was just like, I knew it was there, but it was largely numb. But then when I would step down on the floor, it would feel as if I was stepping down on like a bed of nails, because of the neuropathy that I experienced. And I would get these spasms, Lori, that would just knock me. Like, my husband would know, if this happens, do not touch me, because I would just have to breathe through it. These muscle spasms that would be like debilitating, to the point that I, at times, there was like a period of time that I wouldn't drive, because it happened to me once when I was driving, and I almost lost control of the car. So, that existence was part of my life. And when I look back, like, it's hard to even remember, but just, it was such a painful period where everything was so hard. Like, I would go to these conferences like IDSA, Infectious Disease Society of America. And I would, before I went, I mean, think about, this is crazy. I would look at because typically these conferences are big conference centers in big cities like San Francisco or Boston. And I would look at the curriculum and see what I wanted to attend, what lectures I wanted to attend, and poster sessions that I wanted to see. And I had to strategically, I would download and find out the center, where the bathroom was, where the lecture halls were, because I knew how much I had in me, how much, fatigue.
Your battery only went so far.
Yes, it was like a battery. I need to be here. I mean, it was crazy, the amount of planning. It wasn't just, I'm going to the IDSA conference for my education to read about the most recent research, but I would spend endless hours calculating,
Wow.
where I could, I mean, that's exhausting.
But this is a great point, right? So we have all these people now who are dealing with diabetes, heart disease, hypertension, not sleeping well, overweight, fatigued, stress, all these things. And it's so overwhelming to them. How can we live the life that I feel that we are each individually put here for, and live a thriving life where, the body that we're inhabiting is not hindering us from pursuing those dreams and goals that could change the world, right? And affect so many people. Something, I think chronic disease is the biggest anything in our play besides the world, climate change and all that stuff. But I think as individuals, it's so very important that we understand that chronic disease is keeping you from living the life that you have. And if it's a choice of eating what you're eating every day, make a different choice so you can lead a different life. And uh,
Oh,
yes,
I agree. I agree. Imagine if we all lived to our potentials.
oh,
If we had that clarity and what we
amazing.
could accomplish. Um,
It would be, and it actually is kind of sad to think about where all the missing elements that we could be having right now. So,
but
but
the flip
we are
side,
the light. We are the
we are
light.
the light. Yes.
We are the little light in the little candle in the darkness. It's
But
getting bigger.
the little light is growing, right?
This
It's
little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. You know that song?
yes. And I've
I-
never heard you sing before, but I love it.
oh, it gets better. No, I'm just kidding. You don't want to hear me sing. Oh my goodness. Alrighty. But I do want to talk too, because you talk about movement and sleep and stress and substance abuse and connection. And I know we all know that plants are there's so much evidence to talk about the plants, and we talk about exercise, but stress and sleep, I think, are two elements that are a little bit harder because one, how do you, it's not like you can choose to just turn off a light and go to sleep, and you can't just choose not to have stress in your life. So how,
Yeah.
talk about one or two of those and tell us what we should
Yeah.
be
Well,
doing.
let me start with sleep, because sleep was a big issue for me personally. I would have described myself in medical school and even before the MS diagnosis as an insomniac. I was one of those young women that worried about everything. The exam that I was about to take, am I going to get into medical school? Am I going to get into the residency? So everything was just like, and you know what I worried most about it? The minute I got into bed, because then my head was just like
Monkey mind, I call it monkey mind.
100 miles per minute, and and just miserable. And then came the MS diagnosis, and all of a sudden, everybody wanted to write me a prescription, and I was like, okay, I'll take it. And I started taking Ambien and
Wow.
Ativan and all of it, and I was like, it was great. You know why it was great for me? Because now I was sleeping, and it was knocking me out, and I didn't have to worry about all of my problems. And my problems had really become quite heightened now that I had this chronic disease, and I was told I'd be in a wheelchair by the time I was in my late 30s. So,
Wow.
I was mortified, I was depressed, I was sad. So at least this was my escape.
Mm,
It really was. It was my
makes
escape.
sense.
At least I was able to, what I learned was that, yeah, I had passed out for 8 hours, but guess what? The quality of my sleep was terrible.
Mm,
And all of those wonderful things that are supposed to be happening where we get into those deep stages of sleep, I wasn't getting there, because when I woke up, guess what? I felt like I had a hangover, and guess what? My problems were still there, right?
mhm.
They were still there. And I was addicted to these medicines for a long time, and I had to learn how to come off of those medications, taper off those medications, and really understand sleep physiology, read
Mm,
the science behind sleep, understand the environment in sleep, understand the pre-sleep rituals, like what was I doing in my everyday life that might be contributing to poor sleep. Things like coffee, alcohol, right? Alcohol was something that helped me numb the pain. So
mhm.
alcohol, right? Um, understanding the importance of structure in sleep, how it's really important. People don't realize this, that you really should have structure around your sleep. Like there should be, I say, you pick a go to bed time and a wake up time. And in between, there should be 8 hours. You want to sleep at least 7, ideally 8 hours. And that should be pretty much fixed. Like I go to bed, don't tell anybody, at 9 o'clock, but I wake up at 5 a.m. every morning. And at 5 o'clock, I am the most energized person imaginable. If we did this interview at 5 o'clock, you'd be like, calm down. But that's what works for me. But if you would talk to me around 8:30, you'd be like, Saray, are you okay? Because I'm dwindling down and I'm ready to go to bed. That's so important, having that structure, right? The environment, the room should be cool, dark, and quiet. That makes a big difference. We can't stare at these terrible things. What do we do before we go to bed? We check our I don't know, Instagram or text
Facebook, emails.
We're looking at our iPad because we're reading. That blue light is interfering with melatonin being released from the pineal gland. So the physiology of sleep. And I'm like, I'm reading this and I'm going, oh no, I do that. Oh, I got to change this. And you know what happened? I changed those things. I created structure around my sleep. And the first couple of nights I was like, staring at the wall, and I was mad and I wanted to take the Ambien, and I knew if I fell asleep at 4 o'clock in the morning, I had to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, regardless. Even though I was really, really tired, I got up. And I was miserable that day because I just wanted to sleep. But I couldn't take a nap because then that would set me back. I went to bed at 9 o'clock, right? And then I woke up. It's about structure. It's making that sacrifice early on. And people say to me, oh, I can't do it. You can do it. This works for everybody. You just have to be disciplined enough to do it. And then that's what, again, not complicated, simple. I spell it out in the book. There's no magic here. We don't want to be, and I want to say this because it's important. I was having a conversation with a colleague of mine earlier today. It's not that medicine is bad. It's not that I'm against pharmaceuticals. Not at all. I worked for a pharmaceutical company at one point in my life, and it was a good experience. I helped to develop treatments for patients with hepatitis C as an infectious disease specialist. I worked on research regarding HIV medications. These are all listen, my son has seizures. The medication that he takes every day is a life-saving medication. So it's not to say that medicines are bad. There's a role for medication, but when we know that a large percentage of the diseases that we see today in clinical practice, those diseases that I named that are in the top 10 causes of death that the CDC provides us every year, that so many of them are largely preventable by modifying our behaviors. In the absence of medication, we should start there. We should definitely start there. So it's not to say that medication, if you need to take medication, you should take medication. I never tell MS patients that they shouldn't take medication. It's not this or that. That's not, even if you're on a medication, you should optimize every aspect of your lifestyle. Because just because you have MS doesn't mean that you're not going to get diabetes, or that you're not going to get heart disease, or that you're not going to get breast cancer, or you're not going to get Alzheimer's disease. That's the wonderful thing about lifestyle medicine, is that prescription is this overarching umbrella that's going to address all of it. And it's going to favor you. So why not do it? Doesn't mean you can't take your disease modifying therapy. If that's what you've decided you wanted to do, you had a good conversation with your neurologist and you've weighed out risk benefit and you understand the side effects of the drug and the risks if you don't take it, that's fine. But to do that and then ignore what we're talking about, that to me is malpractice.
Oh, I agree. I think leaving that out of the conversation, and I had this conversation actually with a patient regarding a prescription medication for osteoporosis, right? So, she has severe osteoporosis. She is really concerned. And, we had this conversation, like you have to weigh the risk and benefits. And with your severity, I would recommend you take this medication along with everything else that we're doing. And there was a bit of resistance. And I think that's interesting because in our field, there are physicians who no medications, these are poison. No, I think that's just as bad as someone saying only give you medication and ignoring the lifestyle medicine. So
I
that's,
agree with you.
we
Yes,
have to walk the path where we're marrying both of these very important, amazing advances of understanding and knowledge to make you, the patient sitting in front of me, the best opportunities for a thriving, healthier life that you can at this point in your life. And so you're exactly right. The medicines can be life-saving, but at the same time, they're not everything. But maybe you need less meds if you start instilling these type of practices too.
exactly. Well
Mhm.
said.
Yes. And so structure around sleep. I love it. What about stress? Because stress ain't going nowhere.
Yeah, well, that's right. So it's not, people think it's this like cloud that like in a cartoon bubble that sits above our head. It's not. I mean, there are physiological manifestations to that, like, oh my God, worrying about the exam. Like my daughter's taking her SAT tomorrow. She is like
Oh.
super anxious right now and worried about it. So we're doing a little bit of meditation, a little bit of breathing, and helping her to understand perspective, right?
Mm,
Like, to her right now,
it's
the
everything.
world is the SAT. But
Mhm.
we know, with a little bit of perspective, we're going
Oh,
to
just
pull
a couple
back
of decades.
a couple of decades, that this too will pass, and
Mm,
this is not the beginning or end of your life. This will be a moment, and you've prepared for it. You give it your best, and guess what? You can always retake it. The world is not, but again, it's about perspective.
yeah.
And that's really the lesson with the management of stress, is really offering patients the ability to step out of their existence, and almost look at your situation in with objective eyes.
Mhm.
You can have one event occur and two people interpret it completely differently, right? One
Mhm.
person could say, oh my God, this is the worst thing that could have happened, this is the end. And the other person could say, it's a bump in the road, it's not ideal, but it is what it is. And I think that what I've learned in my life, and what I try to convey to patients, is that whatever life brings us, we suffer when we refuse to accept it. That's why we suffer, right?
Accept it. And I always tell people, whenever you have something come into your life, this less than ideal, ask that question of, what are you here to teach me? Right? Because I really feel that there are reasons that we attract things. Maybe it's my belief, my spiritual beliefs, but I really think those are here to mold us, teach us, move us in a different direction.
I agree 100%. Those are experiences that we need to have to get
Hmm.
to our next.
If you wouldn't have MS, we wouldn't be here talking.
That's right. I, I, it's hard to believe this. And when I say this, um, people always look at me and wonder if I've lost my mind. But I say this, and I mean it wholeheartedly. The best thing that ever happened to me was this diagnosis, because it served me in an invaluable way, in regards to my personal evolution as a woman, a mother, a wife, a doctor. Every aspect of my life, it prepared me for many of challenges that I have had in my life. I have a son that's disabled, and my own personal history has given me, empowered me, and given me the tools I need to serve him. So I truly believe, like you, that spiritually, and my faith has allowed me to understand that life brings us at times difficult moments, but they are moments that are necessary for us to graduate to that next needed stage in our life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I agree 100%, because it's interesting when you look back at the circumstances, for even plant-based telehealth to exist. I had to go into telemedicine, and it was a very quick loss of a job that was unexpected and very very upheaval of my life, that really turned everything around, that led me down the path to be able to do the plant-based telemedicine, which is now I'm seeing is just going to be this tremendous blessing in mine, and I'm hoping many others' lives. And guys, it's like that had to happen.
I mean, I think you've had many changes occur in the period of time that I've known you, and
Oh, way more than I was expecting.
yeah, and yet you, throughout it all, you've maintained this positive attitude. You have this amazing family, a husband that supports you 100%, no matter what. I think you've moved 3 times.
I lived in 3 states last year.
Okay, I mean, you have this family, your children who are so supportive. You said they're helping you with
Yeah.
stuff. I mean,
I'm very lucky.
So it's family that yeah. I mean, there's so many blessings.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I grew up in a family that was not like that, and so I'm pretty sure God said, "I think you've suffered enough on that category. I'm gonna be extra nice to you." I was like, "Thanks, I really appreciate that."
And God delivered. There you go.
He was it, because it didn't start out that way, but and and finally, I really want to just speak to, because you write about there's a conclusion. So what, besides every doctor should be prescribing this book to their patients, because they don't have the time to have the conversations that they should. They can have this and say, okay, read this chapter, come back, and let's talk about it at your next follow-up. I mean, I really think that could be literally a checkoff list in a prescription. What would be your advice to either that physician or someone who's considering, like, wow, I really maybe need to look into this and how I can even optimize my life further? What would be your advice for them?
Yeah. Well, I think that this is going to sound almost grandiose, but I think that we need, as a profession, to regain control. The way the healthcare system of today is convoluted. It's created a scenario in which we're expected to see patients every 15 minutes. It's hard to talk about lifestyle medicine and to offer behavior modification when you have 15 minutes. The reimbursement model is upside down. You make a whole lot of money if you're putting in stents and doing cabbages and bariatric surgery, but those internists and family medicine folks who are in there and really supporting patients in behavior modification and changing lives. I mean, the person that you just described, the diabetic, or whose life is changed for the better, minus the scar in his chest and the amputee, all those things that you're bypassing, you're avoiding, are not valued by our third-party payers in our healthcare system. So part of what I hope, and this sounds sort of, is anything in our world that is going to serve to awaken us and cause us to come together and say, we're not going to stand for this anymore. The doctor-patient relationship must be reinstated under our terms, not under the terms of some healthcare system or some CEO at some
bean counter. Exactly.
That upsets me. Now you're getting a little bit of my Latin Cuban.
I love it.
Ricardo. I'm going to start speaking Spanish, and
we're going to mix my Irish in it. We'll get going, girl.
Yeah. I want to see that change, because it shortchanges the patient. It shortchanges the doctor. We have doctors, our doctors are burnt out. We have so many doctors that are growing dependent on substance abuse issues. We have one of the highest rates of suicide in our field.
Yes.
And it's largely because of this environment, this terrible environment that we're asked to practice in, and it has to change. And I hope that my little book and my little film play a role in moving that argument further, so that we say no more and we bring change.
Absolutely. I consider it kind of like a flywheel, right? So, a flywheel is where you start slowly and it's really a lot of work, but once you start getting the momentum, it will start propelling itself. And I feel like, your book, your movie, everybody's little bit that we're doing, like in the beginning, it was Dr. McDougall, Dr. Esselstyn, Dr. Furman, they were doing all the hard work and pushing that thing. But now it's getting easier. And as we continue to roll, that when my daughter is, practicing medicine and, generations after that, this is like, why? Well, this has always been like this, right? I want that to be the case. Like, that we go back to that. So
then, I mean, that would be the great happy ending.
Absolutely. And on that happy ending, I will say thank you. I want to be respectful of your time. I just want to say thank you so much for allowing me to be your first book interview. And it was such an honor to speak to you.
I got to hear you singing. I mean, come on. Who knew that would happen?
Oh, there's so much more you don't know. Yeah, right. I'm about as
We'll
transparent
have
as
to
I
have
come.
more interviews.
My snorting, that will be good. Yeah. But no, it's always fun. I told my husband I'm going to talk to Saray today. She goes, "Oh, Saray's amazing." I'm like, I know. Oh,
And it's always a blessing to spend time with you. You
well,
are
thank you. Thank you very much. And where can we get your book and when is it coming out?
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, I guess every place that you can get any book. And
Okay.
it's released on January 12th.
Excellent.
And it is available for pre-order. I'm supposed to say that.
Excellent. Yes, it
Yeah.
is. And we'll put a link. Click the link below, everybody. Buy the book and then actually buy one to send to someone you love because they need it during this new year. And let's just all start fresh in the new year. And so it'd be an
Let's-
excellent way to start.
2021 is going to be a great year. So
Anything's going to be better than this year.
you couldn't make it up.
No, you couldn't. I mean, no, I don't. You just sit here and go, this is just the craziest thing ever. And so, yeah, it's pretty crazy, definitely. But we're here. We have a solution at least for other things, and will decrease, hopefully the morbidity if you do get COVID or something other infectious disease. That's really important to understand. So, thank you, Dr. Stancic.
Thank you, my love. It was wonderful speaking to you.
Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed that video. Before you go though, please hit the subscribe button and the alert button so you will be notified whenever we upload any new videos. On Monday, we upload the Healthy Human Revolution podcast. Now, if you'd rather listen to the podcast, you can find it on all the major platforms, such as iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, and even Spotify. On Tuesdays, we upload the Doctor's In. This is where I answer your questions. Thinking of that, could you please comment below any questions you might have about health or wellness or any topics that you would like me to cover? Now, if you're looking for more resources on how to start a plant-based diet, sustain a plant-based diet, exercise, recipes, anything regarding wellness, we've got you covered. Check out healthyhumanrevolution.com. And again, thanks for watching.